IT needs to come to the business and talk to them as business people. They need to come with, these things are actually complex because of these reasonable not because I need to deploy this .NET framework, or I need these servers, or I need this thing, but at the business side of it. It is complex. We need scale. We're going to have 1 million customers. We need this type of scale. We need all this business logic built in, because billing is hard, because they have all these regulatory requirements that bring these types of requirements back to the business so that both parties understand the level of complexity, not at the framework version, whatever of it, but of the complexity.
Yeah, I do think that's where those NFRs become a really important aspect of that conversation, because I know that more often than not, the business isn't really considering those as part of the project, and they can work to expand the timelines significantly if some of those things aren't already in place from a foundational aspect. But I would bring to the conversation for any project, certainly any project of any great length, to ask the business, have you thought of this? How much volume, data volume, or transaction volume is going to occur? How many button clicks are going to happen? How much data can I expect to flow back between browser and backend? How much storage am I going to need? How much capacity is going to be required? What are some SLAs around performance? When I click this button, what's my expectation on turnaround or response times of that? I know that the business isn't always thinking about things, or maybe just assuming that those things will always be there or always be in place, but it's not magic. We have to account for that as part of the project. So when I would go into it, I'm trying to broaden their sense of what a project looks like and what the project might entail, because it's not always about, again, making the button blue. It's about all of these other things to continue making the button blue and continuing to be able to keep the lights on around that project, and making sure that everything is functioning in a way that you would expect once it's out to the end consumer, right? And if it goes down, did we build in any kind of business continuity plan or disaster recovery plan around this? Because that's a big topic on its own. But did we consider that when the project went out, or when we're trying to gather requirements around it? What if the infrastructure that it's sitting on has a problem? What kind of resiliency did we build into it so that the lights stay on, the end consumers aren't affected, we didn't lose money as a result of that system going down?
That's but the DR, business continuity of a product, is a great conversation to have with the business, because I think it's easily understood. I go to a page and I get, an error message. That's not good. And I think IT can bring forward a set of requirements that if you want none, never a downtime, it costs X. If you're okay with, 2 minutes of downtime when we have an issue, it's Y. If you're okay with 3 hours, it's Z. And to be able to have those conversations almost as a primer to the business. Here are the types of conversations we can have at development, at architecture, whatever. But here's a simple example that you can talk through with them to get them in the right frame of mind of the trade-offs they need to make.
Right. And to add on to that, there's other aspects, the operational aspects of the project that you're delivering as well. Some of that automation, but whether it's CI/CD, whether it's QA, think about any of the things that we'd want to put in place from a process perspective, from building, releasing, testing, et cetera, getting this thing operational and into the different environments, target environments for people to use the project, the new system.
But can you have those conversations with the business? I keep trying to go back to, how do you get the business to understand the complexity that we live with every day?
Well, those are the things that I would bring up. I look at the NFRs, I look at the operational aspects, I look at the efficiencies around things that we as an IT department know we need to take care of and handle as part of everything that we deliver, but the business may not always be aware of, because they're thinking, and maybe rightly so, for the most part, you develop the system, they've tested it in some environment, it works,
well,
they're ready to push it out.
Let's take that as the business example.
Okay.
I'm the business person. I come to you, developer person, gentlemen, and say, how long will it take you to build this? And you tell me 2 weeks. Great. And then I'm like, okay, in 2 weeks you're done. And you're like, okay, well, I need to QA it. As a business person, I'm like, why do you need to QA? We pay all these money for these expensive developers. They clear requirements, because you made me write really good requirements. Why do I need to test it? Do we need to get different developers because they made mistakes? Can't they get it right the first time?
Well, if this is my developer hat that I'm wearing in this conversation, I'm going to say my code's perfect. It works.
Right.
It
So
must,
we'll just go
it
right
must
to
be your
prod.
fault. But I think this is where you need to introduce other people into the conversation so they can ask the extra questions. To your point, we need to do a better job of when an idea is brought to us, asking the right questions so that they start to think along those lines, right? Because if this new idea, we're going to take it and place an ad during the Super Bowl, well, the expectations around the way that solution needs to perform when it goes live is going to be very different than if we just toss it out in the wild in April, right? And the cost for the solution and how you build the solution is going to be very different if we're expecting, 10 million people to hit it within some really, really tight window versus 10 people getting it. And if the right people aren't asking those questions when the idea is brought, you're never going to figure out all of the right things that need to happen, because a developer is going to be laser focused on the problem as they see it from their viewpoint. They don't necessarily have the ability to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, right? They're not concerned with what the operational teams have to deal with or the other teams that are moving code around. They're very focused on, this is what it's going to take me to code my solution. And once I've coded it, as far as they're concerned, you can push it out into the wild.
From the business hat, if I paid you to make the button blue, why do I need to pay Rob to go look at the button to make sure it's blue? It just seems like extra cost. Can't you get it right the first time?
That's a good question.
Your code is perfect.
No, it is perfect. But, there's people involved and people make mistakes. For something that's simplistic, yes, we should be able to get it right, but how?
Nothing's that
When
simplistic. I mean, that's the example to
are
pick on.
things that easy?
Does in my mind, QA is more of a process than the people. And having QA write their test case is also a good way to communicate with the business that I understood you said, when I click the button, I expect it to turn blue. So I told the developer to do that. I wrote a test case, click it in blue, and the business gets a chance to say, no, I actually meant when I hover over it, I want it to change colors. I think QA brings that level of clarity to the test cases, to the real things expected to happen. You can't skip QA. You can't skimp on QA.
Well, what you're really talking about is how do we validate that what I've asked for is what I've received, right? And whether that's people testing it or some sort of automated process testing it, you've got to understand whether or not you want to pay for that validation. Or are you willing to trust, because you've got a tight window, that I'm going to ask Bob to crank out something that creates a blue button, and Bob in the past has done it 9 out of 10 times. We're going to gamble that he's going to get it right this time to meet our tight window and go. And once you get burned by that a couple of times, then I think you're more receptive to, okay, it can't be 9 out of 10. It really needs to be 99 out of 100, right? Because you're never ever going to get it perfect.